Hi everyone, how's it going? JC here with another video, and today I'm going to talk about something very specific because usually I talk about climate change or, politics or atheism, I should say. Not if I say religion, people think I'm a theist. So yeah, I don't talk about religion. I talk about more kind of anti-theism usually. Anyway, today I'm going to talk about teaching English in Asia because I think this is a topic that is on the minds of a lot of people. A lot of people want to do that, especially like, if you come out of, let's say, university, because usually you do need a degree. Like, that's the one thing, I will talk about it later, but they definitely require some kind of degree from a university in order to work as a teacher. So yeah, what I've done in the past is I've worked in Korea, China, and Japan in that order, chronologically. And I will talk about my experiences in each country because the first thing we have to understand really is there are people who say, well, I've been to like 20 different countries or something. And I'm like, congratulations, but have you actually lived in any? And then the answer is no, I have not. And there's a huge difference between visiting a place for a week or less and actually living there and working there and going through all the hoops. So yeah, that's the first very important thing to understand. Like you could have a great time visiting a country. You could go to, I don't know, like Italy and have a fantastic week there. Like I did before. I went to Venice and also some other cities like Verona. Mostly it was like in the northern part, but still, it was nice. But I have not lived in Italy though, so I don't know how the work culture is, you know, how the bosses treat their employees, etc., etc. And this is, of course, these type of things are very critical, I would say, to understand when you work in a foreign country. Again, visiting is one thing. Living there and working there, completely another thing. You could enjoy visiting, but you could absolutely hate living there though. I do apologize. My cat is like a hyperactive Duracell rabbit right now, so he's just like running around like insane. Sorry about that. I can't even cut out the noise or anything. Anyway, so yeah, that's the first thing that you really have to sit down and understand. You could have some ideas about the country, but you have to then kind of think about everything else that comes with it. You have to worry about the salary. You have to worry about the utility bills. You have to worry about, how the bosses treat employees in that country, etc., etc., etc. So just when you visit a country, you don't have to think about pretty much any of that. I mean, you might need like, you may get hospitalized or something like that. That's true. But usually, let's be honest, nothing will happen to you. But once you live there for a long time, you have to worry about every single thing in life that you worry about back in your own home country. So that's the first thing I would recommend. Very, very important. Sit down and actually think about it very, very carefully. Now, yeah, I was saying before, this is an important thing because a lot of people who finish university, they're unable to get a job in their field. Let's be honest there. That's just the reality of this world, unfortunately. Like there there are okay, let me put it this way. There are many jobs out there, but these are typically jobs that people don't train for. So I don't know, like in Canada, it could be some kind of cutting down trees or something, like working in the forest or um, construction work, a lot of construction work. But, if you finish university, your expectation is not to be a construction worker carrying, heavy bags of cement on your back and, uh, God forbid, suffering a awful injury in your mid 20s and then that's going to ruin your life forever, right? it's the same with trees. Like you don't want to carry, like, okay, you get the picture. So yeah, if you finish university, you have certain expectations about life. There are certain jobs that you just don't go for. That's just the reality. Unless you're really desperate and you need money, then it's okay. Look, I'm not going to criticize. This is not the point of the video. Like, you're free to do what you want. But so yeah, in that kind of scenario, teaching, especially abroad, becomes a possibility because you're doing good, like you're spreading knowledge and education to people. That's good. I mean, that's why we send our kids to school and college and university or whatever. It's basically so they can gain more knowledge, more skills, and they can do more in the world. So obviously, like things like education, though, this is direct help. This is like helping back into society right away, because you're basically sharing your knowledge, you're teaching skills, etc., etc. So it's great. Healthcare is another one of those. You're directly and immediately impacting people's lives immediately. Whereas if you work in the office somewhere, you might impact someone's life, but who knows when, really, or if you're even gonna do that, right? So yeah, that's the difference. Anyway, so yeah, teaching. I would say before I go into the country descriptions, I would say that the first thing about myself is that I do not enjoy teaching. I mean, let's be honest there. There obviously, like, if it's adults, and even with adults, I'm very very picky because it depends on the adult. I mean, some adults are, their level is decent enough so they can have a somewhat of a conversation. Like, it doesn't feel like you're talking to a wall and it's just kind of one-way traffic. But yeah, there are of course adults uh, who don't speak much English or any other language. I'm just talking about English because that's what I mostly did. I was an English teacher. So yeah, I'm very picky with adults, but I struggle the most with kids actually. So again, I have to say, and this is again very important. In my experience, 95% of kids were all right actually, but it's that 5% of brats, spoiled brats, and just, assholes, kind of young teenager who act like punks, etc., etc. They are enough to ruin the whole experience. They really are. It can be like hell on earth because I remember there were some times where, obviously, because the schedule is the same every week, like, if you get that brat on, let's say, Thursdays, you're gonna get him next Thursday as well, and then and etc., etc. So I remember sometimes after having these classes, I was really kind of not in a panic because that would be too strong, but I would have this kind of, I don't know, like this very bad feeling that, oh my god, next, just in actually less than 7 days now, I have to teach that asshole again. I have to have him in my class again, and that really starts to play on your mind after a while. I mean, if it's one student like that, maybe you can kind of, swallow it and just move on. But like I said, it's not just one. It's usually like 5% of all the students you get. So if you get 100 students and 5% are bad, that means five are bad, and that can really ruin your experience. Trust me. So I would say, yeah. In my case, I definitely did not enjoy um, the job per se. I did it mostly for money because I didn't really have anything else to do. Yeah, I mean, I could have done other things, I guess, but again, I didn't really want to do any kind of hard manual jobs or etc. etc. Right? So that's another thing you have to sit down and really think about. Is that something that you would enjoy, or is that something you just do for money, or whatever? But you really have to you really have to think about it before you go there. Okay, that's the thing, because once you're there, things get interesting, let's just say. So now I can finally jump into the meat of the video, and I can talk about my experience in each of the three countries I listed before. Chronologically speaking, first I went to Korea. That was back in 2007 to 2008. Uh, that was actually the first time and the only time where I actually worked a full year. I'll talk about it later, obviously, but I did not last the full year later on for various reasons. But in Korea, I did the 1 year. I just stuck it out, and because it's important on resumes. The people, the employers, the potential employers in the future, they will look at it, and if you have just a few months here and there, they might think it doesn't look serious enough. So at least if you have like a full year, just at least do one full year. That already looks a bit better for the future. Anyway, let's start with South Korea. Of course, not North Korea. I don't know why some people like. I remember like even back in the days, I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna work in Korea," and there were a few. Okay, it was a minority, obviously, but there were a few people who said, "You're crazy! Like to go to North Korea." I never said anything about North Korea. Like, why do you think? I don't even know why people automatically assumed that. But whatever. Look, whatever. Yeah, of course, it was South Korea. I worked first in Seoul for 6 months, and then I changed jobs, and I worked in Gwangju for also 6 months. So first, I'm going to talk about my experience in Seoul. The important thing to understand about a job is obviously the salary. So the salary when I worked there, so that was like I said, 2007, 2008. So the currencies have fluctuated since. So please do your research now to check how much it's worth. But at the time, I was making 2 million. So yeah, I was actually a millionaire in South Korea. Yay! So yeah, at the time, I was making 2 million won. That's their currency per month. So back then, if you change the currency, it was roughly one, like I say 1 to 1 because it's easy to calculate. What I mean is 2 million won was equal to more or less $2,000. So you just remove some zeros, but the idea is the same. So when you're spending money, it's easy to convert in your mind how much you're spending. Anyway, again, like I said, today you probably have to check how much it's worth. It's probably changed, obviously. The cool thing about working in South Korea, though, and also in China, is that the company will not always. You have again make sure check with your company because every company is different, right? But I think most companies will provide you with an accommodation. In the case of Seoul, unfortunately, yeah, I'm not a picture guy. Okay, I'm not like an Instagram maniac or anything like that. So unfortunately, I don't have photos to show you of the apartments. Sorry about that. I know it would help. So you'll have to take my word for it. In Seoul, I lived in an apartment building. I don't remember which floor it was, but it was pretty high. Um, it was like over 10, I think, because one time the elevator was broken and I had to get down the stairs all the way, and that took a while. I definitely remember that it was past the 10th floor, but which one exactly, I don't remember. Anyway, it was a nice apartment. You had a nice bathroom. You had a pretty big living room. A nice view because it was pretty high up. I could see like mountains in the distance. The view underneath was so-so. Well, look, it's Seoul. It's a huge city. Cities are typically not very nice to look at. So yeah, but the mountains in the background, that was pretty cool. The other cool thing, obviously, is that the apartment is fully furnished. And that's important. That's super important actually, because it means you don't need to buy all that crap. Like you don't need to buy a fridge or a microwave or a washing machine. You don't need to do any of that because it's already there. And that saves, I mean, you can calculate it right now because I'm sure you buy these things back in your home country, and you can calculate how many hundreds of bucks, if not more, you'll just save just not buying all this shit. This is very important. And yeah, in my case, there was everything. There was a bed, a microwave, a washing machine, a stove, yeah, anything you need, really. The only thing you have to be careful with is the internet connection. So the way it works in Asia is that these type of, the internet providers, they don't really trust foreigners. And the reason for that is because sometimes there are many cases where foreigners just pack up and leave, and basically they don't pay that the final bill basically. So they bail out on the bill, and there's no way, okay, there's absolutely no way that some South Korean internet provider is gonna, chase somebody in the States for like 80 bucks. It's just not worth it. But it pisses them off, and it makes them change the strategy of how they provide the services. So what they do is they will ask you for a credit card if you have that, especially like in your, obviously in your country, because that way they're guaranteed to get paid. Okay, like even if you run away from the country for whatever reason, they're still going to charge you. And that's a problem for people who don't have a credit card. So in my case, I think at the time I did not, like mine expired. I think I had one from the UK at the time, and that expired. I didn't have a new one, and obviously, like within Korea, it's very, very difficult to get a credit card just right off the bat. So you have to think about that. Like this is not, you're not just gonna go there and boom, you got your internet plugged in and you're good to go. It's a bit more tricky, so just bear that in mind. All right, so that's basically about the apartment. I would say like definitely that was all fine. The one thing I would say about that particular company I worked with is that they, I think, I don't remember exactly what happened, but something happened with the arrival date. So basically, okay, what happened, I think, was they told me to go there on a certain day. I think it was in August of 2007 or so. And so I went ahead and booked my ticket. And then that was just like a few days before I was about to leave, right? So basically, I could not cancel anything already. I get this email from them, and they tell me that, so I originally applied for a school that was mostly for kind of teenagers, especially late teenagers, and maybe some adults, but I'm not sure about that. But it was definitely kind of a more high school environment, which I'm better suited for, like I said earlier in the video. But I get this email just like a week or even a few days before I'm about to leave, and they tell me that they changed my contract. They're going to change my contract from that place to a school in Seoul, which is fine because I was flying to Seoul anyway. At least that's okay. But it's a school for kids and only for kids. And I immediately there I already had many red flags and alarm bells going off. But unfortunately, and this is the thing, I couldn't cancel because I was in Canada at the time. My visa was expiring in Canada, so I think that I literally had to leave in August anyway. And yeah, I thought I had everything agreed with that company, and everything was set, but they changed it. So all right. Anyway, that was the first red flag, and then the second red flag was when I got there. Luckily, they were able to arrange an apartment for me, even though I got there, early according to them. So that was okay. Uh, but the other thing started when I got there. Again, they didn't tell me anything about that before I actually got there. It's kind of important, and you'd think that they would tell me, but they didn't. It was really spectacular. It's a horrible management. Let's be honest there. Even though they are a pretty big company in Korea, which is pretty shocking. So in the first week I'm there or so, I get I don't know, I get a phone call or something from my kind of like a supervisor, let's say. And she was very nice with me, actually. She understood my whole problem. She was very apologetic. And yeah, we had a pretty good, like, first initial time. And, she was not my boss, by the way. She was a boss of a different branch. But that's the first person I met when I was there. Anyway, I get a phone call. She tells me, hey, we actually need to put you into this training program. And I'm like, fine, okay, because I don't have any teaching experience. I've never done it. I mean, I can imagine what it's like, but I've never actually done it. So, okay, fine, sure. So I get to the place, and there's a guy there, the instructor, and he says, okay, so now, we're gonna do like a few days of kind of, what do you call it? Orientation. Orientation/training. That's what it was called. And then he says, okay, so after the end of that period, you're going to have to take a test. And if you fail the test, then sorry, but you're going to have to basically, like, that's it. Like, we're done here, and you're going to have to go back to your country. That's what they tell me 1 week after I'm there. Don't you think that's an important detail to mention before I get there? So, of course, that scared the shit out of me because now I'm truly in a panic. I'm in a foreign country. I'm far, far away from the US. I don't know anybody in Korea. I don't have obviously, the visa I have is good for like 1 month or something like that. So maybe I can, bum around somewhere for a month, but after that, I'm screwed, right? With all my luggage, etc. So that was shocking, to be honest with you. That was really shocking, and I was like inside, I was really, really furious about it all. To be absolutely clear, of course, I didn't show it because I don't want to get fired before I get hired. But I was absolutely like fuming with the treatment that the company provided. Anyway, luckily, I have to say the training was really, like, easy stuff. Like, seriously, uh, a baby could probably understand most of the instructions. Um, the test itself was very, very easy. I think it's designed to not make people fail, so at least that's some kind of positive. But anyway, yeah, I passed the test. Uh, they brought me to the other branch, and then I met my initial boss, who was a woman. I actually thought she was very nice and very open. Um, yeah, I didn't have any problem with her whatsoever. It was still a few days early before the job started, and so I spent a few days just at home and kind of, exploring the area, walking around a little bit and whatnot. But the interesting thing happened after that. This is really a crazy story, though. If you combine everything and you put it together, it's a fucking crazy story. Okay, so the first day I get to my job, it was actually a kind of promo day. So they were trying to, basically go out in the streets and with leaflets, and you hand them out to just people walking around. The idea is you advertise the school. I don't know why they didn't do it before and why I have to do it. I mean, again, that was not part of the job description, really. Okay. Anyway, so that was that. But then the next time I went to my job, that was already, I think I think it was still very early days. So we had very few students at the time because it was just a new branch. They were just starting out, etc., etc. I get there and my boss is gone, is just gone. And instead of her, she was replaced by the head teacher at the time, who was another Korean woman. I'm not going to say her name. But anyway, yeah. And she, by the way, so like I said, I had pretty good, you know, relationship with the first boss. I think she was very nice and stuff. But I had an absolutely horrible relationship with that head teacher woman. Obviously, not on day one, but as time went on, definitely horrible. And I will explain why. So when we asked about what happened to the original boss, we were told, and of course, you know, this is just something they can tell because they have to say something. There's no way to actually verify this is true or whatever. Look, we don't know. But we were told that that woman said some not good things to the management. Okay. But again, this is just what they said. We have no idea what was said, and we just have to take their word for it. I'm not a big fan of doing that, so I'm gonna stay, and still to this day, I'm extremely skeptical about that explanation. And then, of course, or as time went on, I discovered that yeah, that woman, she she was a real bitch. Like, she did not like me whatsoever. And I think it's not just me. I think she had a problem with men in general. Like, she had something, like some kind of deep hatred against men for some reason. And of course, me being the only male teacher there was another guy there who was kind of a liaison guy. I think he didn't get much love either. So it was not just me; it's men in general. Like, she was a. I don't like to use these kind of words, but maybe she was a kind of feminazi. Like, she thought, you know, women are superior and fuck the man kind of thing. Um, yeah, that was a really torrid time, obviously. And there's a few other things that happened when I worked there. The first interesting thing is that her son, who was like 12 or something like that, he was actually in one of my classes. So we had three teachers, but he was in one of my classes. And especially towards the end of my 6 month stay there, he really kind of enjoyed my style and stuff like that. So he would come in and he would, you know, give me hugs. He was one of the few actually who did that. And I at the time I thought that's really strange because I don't see him do that with his mother. You would think that he would do that with his mother, but he didn't. And I was really starting to say that she must be a really bad mother and probably just a bad woman in general. I probably, like, you know, I obviously told him eventually that, you know, I'm leaving, and he was, maybe he said something to his mother about that, but obviously he has no influence over her whatsoever. Another curious thing that happened is that in my classroom, so the way that it works is that we had a projector in the room, and each week we were given slides basically by the company, and all we have to do is use the projector to project the slides on the, you know, on the screen. And the students have to do certain stuff, like they have to repeat sometimes, or they have to, yeah, usually it was a lot of repeating something. You listen and repeat, and also memorization, which I'm not a fan of memorization, so I didn't like that aspect at all. But in my classroom, that projector or whatever was not working for months and months and months. Like I did say to, obviously everybody knew that it wasn't working, but for whatever reason, I don't know, the wiring or something like that, it just was not working for months and months and months. So what I did instead is just, kind of classic teaching. You use the board and a pen. So I would write certain things out and I would, give them kind of synonyms and stuff like that. Basically, really be a teacher. If you use the projector, that thing is that thing is lame. Okay, like that's just kind of that's just a gimmick that the company uses. That's not serious teaching, though. Like, pen in hand and to the board with a book, that's that's proper teaching. Anyway, so that was cool, and that definitely taught me a lot instead of relying on technology. But yeah, at one point, I was really like just tired of my treatment there and just kind of fed up with the whole thing. So I told my boss that, hey, I'm this is not working out. So I'm gonna I'm getting out of here at some point, sometime. Just letting you know in advance. And that conversation happened maybe 2 months before I left. Since there was no follow up since, I thought that maybe that conversation just didn't go anywhere. Maybe, you know, maybe they changed their mind. Maybe I changed my mind a little bit. At the time, I was getting a little bit better, so I thought maybe it can work out. And then 2 weeks before I left, eventually, my boss, I think, comes to my room and she tells me, "Hey, so we found a replacement. It's some Canadian young woman who's coming, and yeah, we expect you to leave in 2 weeks." I was like, my jaw dropped to the floor, literally, because again, you are in a foreign country. You have all these things going. You have your bills. You have your, it's not just, it's not easy to just pack up and leave. Okay, and she gave me a 2 weeks heads up. I think that uh, that's unacceptable. I mean, if it at least give a month. At least give a month. 2 weeks, man, that's tough. And of course, I was really, again, I was really furious about it all. But there's nothing I can do. So on one hand, I started to look obviously for a ticket out of there. On the other hand, I found some kind of job board there where it was pretty active, I thought. So I posted my resume there and, just kind of hoping for the best. Maybe somebody else will pick me up and we'll go from there. Now, luckily in my case, somebody did pick me up, and it was a guy from Gwangju, which is in the south of Korea. And just one moment. Yep, that's fine. And just completely out of the blue, I think I get a phone call one day during the weekend, I believe, when I was at home. I get this phone call, and this guy pretty much, it was a very interesting conversation because there was a little bit of intro. Of course, he said, "Okay, I'm this guy. I'm working for this company," and then he says, I saw your resume there. I need you." That's basically in the first 30 seconds of the conversation. That's what he said. "I need you," and I'm like, "Whoa, that's really great," because I was in a panic. I was about to book my ticket and get out of here. But if you can arrange something, if we can start from in 1 week or something like that, then I'm available. Like, let's go. At the time, he at that school, he didn't have another foreign teacher. All the teachers there were locals. So I can see why he was eager to have me there. And I remember like he drove actually all the way from Gwangju to Seoul, which it takes many hours to get there. He was a bit late, but to be honest, there was a lot of traffic on the day. I think it was a weekend, and there's a lot of traffic in Korea on weekends. So yeah, but anyway, he got there, picked me up, picked up my luggage, and then we drove all the way down to Gwangju, which again took forever because we got stuck in a traffic jam, etc., etc. But again, the same thing happened over in Gwangju. I was provided with an apartment, which was in that case just on the ground floor. You just kind of walk in there, and bam, your apartment is there. You had a bathroom, you had a living room, which was just a little bit smaller than in Seoul, but still, for one person, very acceptable. The kitchen was a bit small, but again, look, it's just you just cook there, and then you take the food to the living room, basically. It's one of those, right? So yeah, that was okay, and that was paid for as well. Okay. The other cool thing about that place is that he already had the internet hooked up there, so I didn't have to go through all this bullshit of having no credit card, or you know having a really hard time getting internet. That was already all provided. Obviously, I had to pay for it, yes, but at least it was already there. And yeah, the school itself was actually much better for me because they had adults. They and obviously, yeah, again, like I said, 5% of students, mostly kids, are real troublemakers. Okay, so yeah, again, it's gonna give you a torrid time. But overall, I did my job. Unfortunately, after 6 months, I was done with it. I'm like, yeah, I can't. I especially in the final month, which was August of 2008. I was really starting to go kind of into depression mode. I was really just done. I couldn't do it anymore, and my boss knew that I was there for 6 months, so basically in September I would leave anyway. But he tried to keep me. He tried to keep me for longer, but I was just completely done. And yeah, I said no. I mean, thanks, of course, I appreciate it, but I can't take it anymore. Uh, the one thing I will say, and this is important again, if you do go through this experience, and I think this is important, I think it's better if you get a girlfriend there, or if you're a woman, you get a boyfriend, or if you're obviously same sex, if you get same sex partner. Look, that's wonderful. I think it helps a lot. People don't value that perhaps too much, but I think it's really, really important to have someone there, like to go back home, and you're not just alone. Because if you're alone, like I was alone there, it really starts to play on your mind after a while. Like you just have so many things to do by yourself. Like maybe you don't want to clean some days, you don't want to cook some days, but you have no choice. Like you're alone. So yeah, I really think this is important. I really can't stress that enough. Obviously, you don't want the wrong person. I get it. But if you can get somebody that you like, again, it's just a girlfriend, it's just a boyfriend. Like we're not talking about marriage and living together for a long time. It can be just something kind of short term, but I think it really, really makes a big, big difference. So definitely consider doing that. All right, so I will finish this particular segment by speaking how much money you'll actually save, because again, that's something people need to know. Like I said before, my salary, so in US dollars, was basically around $2,000. The rent is paid for by the company. So usually the rent there is between, I would say, 500 to maybe $1,000 a month. This is money that you never have to pay. Okay, the company will pay for you. So that means automatically that the salary, right, is technically a little bit higher. I mean, it could be, you could say that, well, actually I'm making 2000, 2500 or $3,000 a month. Okay, the rent is taken, sure, but from that 2000, you obviously have to pay the utility bills, your food, transportation. Some schools are very close to your apartment, so maybe you can just walk there. Some schools not, so you may have to take a taxi or something like that. When I worked in Seoul, I took a taxi to go to work and back every day. And to be honest with you, I think the taxi fare one way was like $3 or something like that. Obviously, if I take the bus, it's cheaper, yes, but it also takes longer. Yeah, look, I will not complain. If the taxi ride is $3, I'm taking the taxi. Okay, there's no way I'm taking anything else. So that's cheap. The medicine in Korea is ridiculously cheap. I mean, when I was there, I was sick a lot because I'll talk about it later, but sick kids will come, okay? For some reason, even though this is not public school, this is just a kind of extra English private school, doesn't matter. For the fanatical Asian parents, school cannot be missed at any cost. So they will send their sick kid to the school. And that means most likely you'll get sick as well. So I was sick a lot there. Mostly it was tonsillitis. But yeah, I was really sick, like every 2 weeks almost. I was sick. Um, but I have to say, yeah, the Korean healthcare, you get the insurance from your company, of course. And it was really, 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 really cheap. I don't know how many times I can repeat really just to stress that it was very cheap. I'll give you an example. So one day, okay, I'm sick. I go to this doctor who was in the same building actually, just a few floors below. I go there, I get the full checkout, I get a bit of treatment, and I get medicine as well. All of that less than $10. I know that people right now in the US are losing their shit because obviously this is kind of fantasy land, right? It's almost free. Um, Seems like fantasy land for sure. But that's how it goes. That's how it goes, man. Uh, that means that, the government actually cares about people, even young people. Obviously, I was like in my kind of late 20s at the time. Doesn't matter. They will take care of you. So all of that is great. And that means at the end of the day, you save a lot of money. Typically, each month I would easily save $1,000, but it could also go up to $1,500 on months where I didn't spend much at all. So, yeah, you can make quite a bit of money. Obviously, look, it's still look if you're going for a job that's gonna pay you, if you expect some kind of $10,000 per month, look, this is not it. Okay, this is never going to be at that level. But if you're just kind of, starting out, and if for you like a 2,000 per month thing is acceptable, and go for it. Why not? Yeah, just let me grab some water and then I'll continue. Okay, so yeah, the final thing I will say about Korea, and again, this is important. So in my early in the video, I said it's a big difference just visiting a country and living there. Now, I know many people who visit Korea for like a week or a few days, and they tell me that how great it is and how the food is great, etc., etc. Okay, you again, you have not lived there. You don't know the people really. Just because a few people smiled at you at the hotel or whatever in the restaurant, that doesn't mean anything actually. I would say in general, I had a very mixed experience there, like with the kids, right? I had especially one class where a lot of these kids, they held very nationalistic ideas. They were always, you know, Korea, 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 like Korea number one. I wonder, Korea number one in what exactly? That's the first question. And of course, the other extreme is that, they say things like, I hate North Korea, I hate China, I hate Japan. And this is very sad when the new generation grows up with these ideas in the head. Like, if you're thinking about progress in the future, you can't have any progress if people are thinking in that way. You can't. It's just this, it's going to be a vicious cycle of hatred, and it's just never going to be broken, right? So that aspect, yeah, I'm really not a big fan of. But I don't know, honestly, in terms of percentage, I don't know how many Koreans behave that way. I just don't know. But I do know that some do. And obviously, it doesn't come from them, it comes from their parents. That's for sure. Kids are like a sponge, they absorb everything that comes from the parents, because usually the parent is the direct authority. That's the person, that this is the adult you see the most in your life growing up. And if they start to put these poisonous ideas into your head, like religion or nationalism, yeah, it's just gonna be with you. It's gonna be part of you, unfortunately. So that aspect, didn't like.